I'm a busy father of a 4-week-old who's also a massive Warhammer 40k hobbyist and enthusiast, and I thought, how could I overload myself even more? I'm going to assemble and paint an entire combat patrol in 1 week.
What?
I'm predicting that this will take 24 to 30 hours spread across the week, so it is quite a lot. So for the average person working a 9 to 5, it's going to be quite a big commitment, and I'm pretty much going to be working till late every night. But what army are you collecting now, Chris? Aren't you a raging heretic and a supporter of the Chaos God Slaanesh? Well, yes. Very well observed. You are absolutely correct. But something you may not know about me already is that I am also a massive emo kid at heart. It was not just a phase mum. So in case that didn't give it away already, I've got the side fringe wearing emo boys, the Raven Guard. I absolutely fell in love with this combat patrol the moment I saw it on YouTube. Like the war suit, even though it may not be the most meta thing in game, I think it can be quite good in Raven Guard with their detachment, and it just looks so damn cool. I like sneaky, scouty, guerrilla tactics and all that sort of stuff. It's got infiltrators, which are, quite decent in game and definitely suit that Raven Guard Phobos heavy style. We've got the assault intercessors. I absolutely plan on going ham with the jump pack marines in this army. Inceptors, assault intercessors, jump pack captains, Ethon Shan, you name it. Vanguard veterans when they release a new kit. But Chris, don't you already have a mostly black army with your Slaaneshi warband? Well, yeah, I do. So this presented a bit of a pickle. I was like, do I really want to have 2 black armies? When I'm looking at my display shelf in a couple years' time, with my plethora of armies on display, I don't want them to be all black. It's a fairly boring and uninteresting colour when it comes to miniature painting as it is. So over the past few weeks, I've been thinking, what can I do to make black more interesting? And the conclusion I came to was I needed to paint something that sort of looks like it's meant to be black, but isn't. Looking up Raven Guard and Black Templar paint schemes, I came across a number of different Reddit posts and YouTube videos, including one of the original Grimdark sponging and stippling videos that Travarian did on his Black Templars, which I was actually going to do for this, and then I decided, no, I've already done one stippled army, and I wanted something that looked a little bit more smooth, perhaps a little bit closer to airbrush level, but without the need for an airbrush or the time to paint something of that level. So to summarize, what the hell am I trying to achieve here? It needs to read as black, but not actually be black. It needs to be fairly quick and easy to paint. I'm under a lot of time constraint here, and I want to see my army come to life and not sit on the shelf half finished for 6+ months. 3, I want it to look good. So here's what I came up with. I did a test miniature to get a rough idea of the scheme that I wanted, and I decided that a cool blue-black or blue-grey would be the answer. So using colours like Dark Reaper, Rust Grey, maybe even Fenrisian Grey at the absolute highest highlights, and potentially dulling this down with a black wash. And the way I'm going to do this quickly, whilst getting somewhat smooth gradients and transitions, is with makeup sponges. That's right, no airbrush, minimal brush work, and predominantly just sponging on with makeup sponges. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the challenge and see how far I can fall behind on day 1. Anyway, I'm going to start assembling this box and tell you a little bit about my plans for how to paint this thing. I think we'll start with the basic jump troops. So obviously the Raven Guard are traditionally black and white. There's a lot of ways you can paint black to make it look less flat and more interesting, but I don't want to paint black again, like I said. And I kind of want to stick to something that reads as black though. I want to stick to something that reads as Raven Guard, like traditional Raven Guard, but not so traditional at the same time. Something that is a little different, that is unique, that is cool, but still has some sort of throwback to what people recognize as Raven Guard. So essentially what I decided to do was look for a color scheme that could read as black in some way, and I looked up a lot of color schemes for Black Templars and Raven Guard, and there were a lot of paint schemes that rely on using whites and greys, or light blue greys and different shades of that, similar to Fenrisian grey, which is what I ended up going with, that sort of color triad. And essentially we're going to be going from a black up to bluish green grey with Dark Reaper, building up a bit of a gradient and highlights towards Fenrisian grey, or even a spot highlight of white. And this way there is brightness and color on the model. It definitely looks blue. I may end up deciding to wash this down with a bit of black wash or something to make it a bit darker, but it reads as blue, yet at the same time you could say that it's kind of like black armor under the moonlight or something like that, which is also really fitting for Raven Guard thematically. So this is roughly what I'm going to do. You can see there, I've done some battle damage with some chipping with the highlight colors and some Rhinox hide, and probably gonna put on some metallic chipping as well. I don't know, this is the prototype. I may end up refining it further later, but like I said, I'm just gonna be trying to paint my models to about a tabletop standard throughout this week, so it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't even need to be completely finished in my mind. It just has to have a few colors on it, make sure everything has a base coat, a little bit of shading or highlighting on some things. What I'm gonna be doing is using makeup sponges, all right? Makeup sponges, I actually got these from Kohl's, and yeah, they're really quite handy, and these things are going to give me a bit of a smoother gradient than if I were to use a normal torn up sponge, like a dish sponge. And some people online even say that sponging can give airbrush-like effects. And I agree to an extent. It's not an airbrush, but maybe you'd call it the poor man's airbrush. I'm confident that this method will be able to deliver faster results than trying to do volumetric highlighting with a brush, where you're going back and forth doing lots of layers or glazing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to showing you how you can get fast tabletop plus standard results, I'm gonna say, using makeup brushes and no airbrush. Now, I'm choosing to use the standard Space Marine pauldrons as opposed to the, let's just call it embossed shoulder pads from the upgrade kit, because I'll find it much easier, particularly with a sponging method, to paint over a completely smooth surface. And I just kind of want to use decals. I haven't used them before, so I intend on trying them for the first time in this project. And I think when I weather the decals and make them sort of blend into the armor and look battle damaged, they're going to look really sick. So that's the reason I'm sticking to the normal pauldrons and not using the ones from the upgrade sprue. Well, you best believe I have been here for 5 whole hours across 2 hobby sessions, 2 days, but 5 hours in total so far, and I've only put together 5 jump pack intercessors. I've never actually timed myself assembling miniatures. I know it takes me a long time to paint, but I really thought I was a lot faster than this. I could make excuses about how many different pieces are in each of these models, and I could complain and make excuses about how many pieces are on each individual jump pack intercessor, how much flashing and cleanup there is to do on them, but ultimately I think I'm just slower than I thought, and I forgot or underestimated how long it takes to assemble and clean up minis. So 5 models, 5 hours so far, technically not even 100% done because I need to add a little bit of basing before I paint them. The majority of the basing will be done afterwards with texture paste, but yeah, there is some work to be done still. And the thing is, I didn't even really customize a whole lot of these miniatures. Like, I used some of the Raven Guard upgrade sprue bits. I ended up using the emo looking head on the captain and used the beaky helmet from that same upgrade sprue, chopped off the neck or the rubber seal, and then stuck it on his backside like it's stuck there magnetically, like the other standard helmet that comes in the actual jump pack intercessor kit, but with a beaky helmet. So I rigged that up myself and added maybe one of the STLs that I printed to give them more raveny flavor per intercessor, in lieu of one of the other pieces, like the little locket gemstone type things that hang from their belts. So really pretty much just straight out the box, but I think they're really cool. These are great models, and I'm really happy with them, but it's just taking way too long, so I better get a rig along if I'm going to get this done within the week. But I've had enough of infantry for now. I need a little break from that, so to keep moving on, I'm going to go to the Invicta tactical warsuit. And I'll be honest, this is probably the thing that sold me on getting this combat patrol and starting this army. There's a lot of cool things about Raven Guard. I definitely will be getting Ethon Shan. Like, he is very important to the Shadowmark Talon detachment and can be very good for viewing uppy-downy shenanigans with Invicta warsuits amongst many other units. But the Invicta warsuits are just really cool, and they're generally like relatively expensive per model. Not per point, not for the points, they're only 125 points, but they're about $100 Aussie. So I was very happy to pick this up in a discount box for about $200. So I'm gonna get into it. I'm gonna skim through most of the build process once again because it's pretty boring, you don't need to see that. And I'll more than likely show a lot more of the footage about the actual painting.
Wow, it's very nice.
So it is day 3. Put in like 6 or so hours. Yeah, I decided to take work off today. Like, well, I mean, I work for myself, so I did a little bit of work and I've got most of the day off. So I'm going to put in a lot of hours today, ideally, depending how Piper, my daughter, goes. I don't want to like fall short, so today I'm going to put in extra hours and see if I can catch myself back up. Just try and wrap this build up. I've still got 10 infiltrators to go as well. That's going to be a bit fiddly, but we'll get into it, see how we go, day 3. All right, we are, I don't know how many hours in today, but things are coming along. But it's late, it's like past 10 p.m. And so I'm talking really quietly. So I'm gonna call it a night and go to bed in a sec, but yeah, I've got all the parts prepared for the 5 out of 10 of the infiltrators, assembled most of one, and then that is it, other than a quick bit of basing. Then we're into the painting, but yeah, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. Yeah, this is only half the infiltrators, so we'll see what we can do. Yeah, we'll wrap it up here and see you tomorrow. Alright, well that took way longer than I care to admit, and much longer than I planned, but build is pretty much done. I think it took about 24 hours of work in total, give or take, so still got to do the basing. That shouldn't take too long. I'm doing desert themed bases. Not going to bother building out cork on top of all the bases like I did for my Chaos Army. So it should be a pretty simple scheme. A couple 3D printed bits, a few grass tufts at the very end. Might experiment with pigment powder, but other than that, for the time being, it's just going to be gluing down a couple things, chucking on some texture paste, and then we'll give it all a prime and be into the painting. Let's go. All right, so getting into the basing. Here's what we're going to be working with. We've got some normal sand. Don't know if we'll actually need this, but just straight sand for the beach. Probably the more important one I should have started with, the light earth terrain texture paste. That is going to form the bulk of the base. Some slightly larger rocks, which are actually just kitty litter. Find these have a good sort of range of shapes and sizes. Some bark pieces. These will make great miniature stones. If I feel like the stones are not quite cutting it, I can tear up some of this or grate up some little assorted cork pieces, corks, and then I think fairly selectively some battlefield trophies. I'm pretty much going to use the human skulls, maybe these like orc skulls, whatever they are, fairly sparingly. And then when I'm done, the whole paint job and everything, I'll add on some grass tufts, like some dead or dying grass tufts. Yes, sorry, and a few 3D printed bits. Got some cacti, because it's a desert theme base, and some Rex barrels, which I'll yeah, just use to make it look like a bit of an apocalyptic wasteland. Yeah, I've got to say my favourite part of this though, breaking off the supports. How good is that? Crisp supports and nice, perfectly formed cacti. And when you make mistakes on areas that you didn't mean to get with the texture paste, you can use a wet brush to dab it away, and same goes for the edge of the base. You're obviously going to paint over it black anyway, but if you leave too much texture, it'll make it look really weird and hard to paint. That was an absolute ordeal, but into the 5th day now. So last night you would have seen I finished off the basing, got to bed about 10:30, 11, and up this morning before I started work to prime everything, just with the rattle can, Vallejo, you know, if you know, you know. Yeah, so everything's looking good. I decided to put the texture paste down and then prime it, so that way I can make sure everything's like nice and unified and consistent color, rather than applying the texture paste at the end and just washing it. I thought that might present some challenges. So yeah, everything's looking pretty good. I'm gonna get into the painting process. In case you guys forgot, I've got my little test miniature here, which is, this goes his head, which is at least somewhat representative of what I want them to look like. Sponging on volumetric highlights. Probably gonna do some sort of wash. I don't know if I'm gonna null and oil it or wait till I've finished this project and then come back with varnish and then an oil wash. But I'm definitely gonna do a bit of weathering and chipping with Rhinox hide, my highlight color, and maybe a bit of metallic for some crispy chipped edge highlights. All right, so first things first, we've got to get all the colors out. We have Abaddon Black to make things a little bit darker. Dark Reaper is going to be next. Got 50-50 mix of each, then the pure color, Dark Reaper, then we come into 50-50 of Dark Reaper and Rust Grey, then pure Rust Grey on just a little bit. And then I think, I should have really written this down, I think I come in with a little bit of Fenrisian Grey mixed in, maybe a few like scratches and whatnot. Edge highlights with Fenrisian Grey, but predominantly these 3 colors. We'll just see how it looks and do a bit off of feel, but these are the 4 colors that we'll need. Yeah, well, that'll get us going for the main parts, which are the base coats of the armor panels. Let's give it a crack. So we're gonna get the sponge and apply some Dark Reaper. Because we're mainly gonna be doing big areas, I'm gonna use this medium-sized sponge. We're gonna dunk it in some water, wring it out mostly, and then just dab off some of the excess so it doesn't come off too strong, and away we go. Alright, so all of these panels are going to be black, or the illusion of black, I guess, so we're just going to apply this pretty liberally over everywhere. Don't have to be too careful about this. We're going to cover like 90 to 95% of all the black panels with Dark Reaper. It is day 6 now, certainly not going to get it all done in time by the end of the week, but it's all good. We'll make a good run at it. I'm just about finished doing the first base coat of Dark Reaper, which is covering like 90% or more of the power armor. So really taking a bit of time doing that, even though the sponge makes it faster than it could otherwise be. But when you're trying to get into the little nooks and crannies, it is kind of tricky. I've been using little cut up pieces of sponge like this to get into those bits, but it still takes time and it's been a little bit annoying. Then I also stuffed up and missed a bit of this little dude priming, so I've got to go back in there. I tried to re-prime this little bit from a downwards angle, from an upwards angle like this, and I still missed some apparently, so I'm going to go in with Abaddon Black and just see if that works. Alright, so onto the warsuit. Turns out I don't actually have the sponges that I thought I did, the ones that are like dome shaped with a stick on them. So anyway, that isn't a big deal. I'll just be using this normal type of sponge. I might even cut the tip off of one. This one's getting a bit worn, so I might cut the tip off so it's flat and be able to use it like that. I don't know. This might still work just fine. We'll give it a try. I'm just going to dab it on one side of this sponge and apply it like this. I think this is a bit too moist, so I'm just going to work a bit of the moisture out, put some more paint on, and well, we'll give it a go. So it's going to take multiple layers to build up the right opacity, and we can also choose which parts we want to, I guess, be more opaque when we're doing this, by applying more layers in certain spots, letting some of the black show through, which I didn't really do a very good job of on the pauldrons. I kind of just covered everything, but there's a little bit of texture, a little bit of variation there, but probably not as much as I would have liked. So anyway, it is what it is. We continue on. That should be silver. That's probably also silver. So I'm just trying to pick out the bits that I know are meant to be, well, black on the box art, or my sort of midnight blue, or whatever you want to call this color scheme. So many bits that could be black, could be silver. When in doubt, just make it black and blue. You know, let's just some awkward bits here. Oh yeah, we can extend the arm out, and I realised that there were some bits I didn't prime because I didn't realise that was even visible. So I'm gonna cover that up with some black base coat, and hopefully that is good enough, and I'll see you in the next bit. Alright, so excuse my mess of a wet palette, but I'm going to try and actually blend some colours on here despite how messy it is. It's all going to be mixed with that same colour that's taking up 90% of the palette, so we're going to go a little bit of rust grey and mix that into the dark Reaper. So we're going to go about a 50-50 mix, I think, which, as I found out recently, doesn't necessarily mean 1-to-1 ratio. 50-50 mix means getting it to be 50, like halfway between the two colours, which, if you have a really dark colour, you'd probably use less than 50% of the dark colour to get a 50-50 ratio because it's so overpowering. So yeah, something like that. These sorts of bits here, I'm just sort of following around the upper part of that shape in a circular motion. The upper ridges here near the corners where that light is going to catch, those sharp edges there, and again sharp edges and sort of towards the top of the armor panel on these bits here. Maybe along this sort of ridge, since it's like a cylindrical shape there, and yeah, it looks pretty good to me. And then when I come in with pretty much pure rust grey, I probably could just skip straight to rust grey, but I'll do one more step. Just picking out the absolute edges and absolute highest highlights. And now I'm going in with pure rust grey. Might be the final highlight. We'll see how it looks. I think it's getting bright enough, but obviously acrylic paints dry a little bit darker than what they look when you first apply them, so I'll suss it out and play it by ear. Alright, so I'm going to be quiet because my daughter is asleep now. Sponging highlights went pretty well. I feel like I got somewhat of an airbrush-esque effect with that. If we have a look at the Marines as well, I've done the Zenithal, which I kind of adjusted to be more front facing, and then from the back as well, so there's more more opportunities to apply the highlights rather than being really from one angle and only catching this part of the model. So yeah, I think it turned out alright. Technically this is actually past day 7, but I did 4 days of assembly, 2 days of painting, 1 day I didn't have time for anything, so that was the 7th day. So I'm coming back a few days later and doing the last little bit, last couple hours, to say that I've actually done 7 full days. Yeah, it's been a slog. I think if I had just set myself the challenge of painting this in 24 hours or 7 days, that would be much more realistic, but we'll live and learn. So I'm going to dry brush. Ideally I'd have chainmail color, but I've only got this normal metallic, so it's a bit brighter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to experiment, trying adding just like a little drop of black Templar contrast paint into this, just to make it a tiny bit darker. So you'll see how that goes. Here's how it's looking after a bit of a dry brush. That was a challenge, alright, no doubt about that. Certainly did not complete it, but despite not getting through too many of the steps, I am pretty happy how this has turned out. And this has put me off to a great start towards painting this army and getting it battle ready. I mean, when you think about it, 90% of the model, at least 80% of the models are just the power armor. So really done quite a lot. In dry brushing on the metallic on the warsuit, I really made this look a lot more complete. Had I not been so naive about the time it takes to assemble an entire combat patrol, if I had just made this a week to paint it, as I said, would have been a totally different story, and maybe we would be looking at a nearly finished, definitely at least like battle ready combat patrol. But yeah, I am really happy with this result. No airbrush, just makeup sponges, tiny bit of dry brushing, at least 50% done, if not more. Now I've just had to go in and clean up a couple parts with black before dry brushing or painting on a bit more metallic. Gonna probably make some of the black parts like the weapons and the rubber suits and stuff like that, make them like a grey black, so black with a dark grey and a light grey sort of highlights to provide a bit of contrast to the blue-black power armor. This is obviously meant to read as black, which doesn't really yet, but yeah, I don't want the entire thing to be blue, so I will throw into different colours. The next step for the power armor, like I said, I'll probably do a little bit of Fenrisian blue for highlighting, just a little bit, and then I'm going to try dull it all down with a Nuln Oil wash, which I had done with the test model. So yeah, that's the plan. Dull down the blue a bit, bring in some more shadows again, maybe do a few little edge highlights and like scratches and stuff, nothing too crazy. At the end of the day, this is meant to be a speed painting scheme, so, you know, I want to try and stay true to that. And Invicta's probably pretty much done actually. I realized I forgot to paint over the feet. That should be the same color as the rest of his power armor. And then we're looking pretty good at that stage. Obviously last of all, we'll be finishing off the basing with paint and pigments, which I do want to try pigments out for something different. And then we can call it a day. So yeah, this is by far much faster than I have ever painted multiple minis before. So much easier and more satisfying than painting Chaos. It is so much less stressful, so much more motivating and satisfying. By painting more miniatures, as well as trying different techniques, I'm going to really move forwards as a painter, rather than just spinning my wheels, going around in circles, painting over mistakes and tidying up things on the same 5 miniatures for the rest of my life. So yeah, this challenge was not a success by any means, but I am very happy with what I've done and what I've got to work with here. So I've definitely learned a lot through this. 1, I've learned how naive I am. 2, I've learned that makeup sponges are a great way of painting an army to, I'd say, slightly more than a battle-ready standard. Additionally, I think they're also a great alternative to an airbrush if you want a similar sort of gradient effects. Something that I didn't talk too much about in the video, but maybe I'll do a separate video on with like a full tutorial of painting a single model, is controlling the consistency of the paint really has a huge impact on how these gradients turned out. And that might seem really obvious to you, but essentially going quite thick, not even watering down the base coat, and then maybe even the first highlight, not really watering it down, but just, you know, not applying too much paint at once, and then starting to water it down more as you apply more layers of the same highlight and then go higher and higher in the highlight. But other than that, the Marines, they're literally just the 2 colors on top of a black primer. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed watching this one. If you'd like to see me fail at another challenge in the future, I'd appreciate any comments down below with suggestions on what I should attempt next. And maybe I won't set myself up for absolute failure next time as well. Of course, I'd also love you to hit like and subscribe so I can make more content like this in the future. Anyway, I've got some work to do clearly, and I've already started assembling my next little projects to add on to my Raven Guard army. So this is me signing out until next time. Catch you later, mate.